Hello, my guest on the Mayor's Forum today is the Press of Atlantic City meteorologist Joe Martucci. Joe's here today to talk about his work as a meteorologist and the upcoming 2020 weather forecast in southern New Jersey. Joe, thank you for being here on the Mayor's Forum.
Mayor, thanks so much. It's a pleasure being here today.
Now, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your career as a meteorologist?
Yeah, sure. Something I like to tell people all the time is, one, you probably don't meet a lot of meteorologists in your life. There's not many of us. And I don't know if you've ever met meteorologists before, but
I would say one or two, so
Okay.
you guys are probably a tight-knit.
yes, it's a
there.
tight-knit community. And what I would say, too, is for a lot of people, meteorology is something you always want to do. I think if you ask 10 meteorologists how long you've known you want to be a meteorologist, 6 out of 10 would say since before middle school, and I was no exception. In fact, one of the first things I ever remember was being in my grandma's basement when I was 3 or 4 years old, and Al Roker was on TV, now on the Today Show, before he was on local news, and I remember my aunt or my grandma saying, like, look, Joe, it's going to be you when you get older, and I remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, it is going to be me. So it's something I've always wanted to do my whole life. I went to Rutgers University, got a degree in meteorology. After there, I worked in private weather consulting in Hackettstown, New Jersey, in Warren County, so pretty much way in the other corner of the state from here. Was there for 4 years working in a consultation. Actually, in my time, the DPW, I believe, was a client of ours here in Stafford Township.
Really?
Yes.
So what would a private weather consultant do?
Sure. So it was really to help minimize costs. So, for example, if you were a DPW director, you wanted to save on overtime costs. Rather than just getting maybe a more generic forecast from your phone app, just say it's going to snow tonight. You want to know exactly when that snow is going to start accumulating on roads specifically, so you can start sending your guys out. You would pay us for forecasts, and we would, when I was at WeatherWorks, we would give you a call and say, hey, snow's about to stick in an hour. Now's the time to get your guys mobilized
I
and
can
ready
see
to
where that
go.
would be very valuable.
Yeah, me personally, I also worked in radio when I was there, did sales and social media as well, and that actually parlayed really nicely into this job at the Press that I've had since September of 2017. I've always been interested in media, always loved weather, like I was just saying before, so this was a great combination of the two.
So when you were at Rutgers, how long did it take you to obtain your degree?
Yeah, so it was a 4-year Bachelor in Science degree, a lot of math, a lot of science. I remember when I started college, I said, if I'm going to graduate with all this math and science, I'm going to be a genius by the time I got out. I don't know if I feel like a genius, but I definitely learned a lot there. And one thing I think I learned a lot just being at Rutgers is to really you have to, if you want to succeed, to break out of your shell. And I think I really did there. I was involved in Meteorology Club. We had our television broadcasting program that I was the student manager of. So I was trying to stay involved when I was at Rutgers.
I would say you've certainly broken out of your shell if you were ever in one.
A little bit in high school. I wasn't the same person.
Now, what are the primary goals of being a meteorologist?
Yeah, so it's to study and forecast the weather in my role specifically, and we serve everywhere from here in Stafford Township over to Long Beach Island, down to Cape May, and out to Cumberland County as far west as Stowe Creek and Bridgeton. Stowe Creek, yes, way out in the Cumberland County. I've had the pleasure of being there a couple of times, but we, every day in my job specifically, I'm producing forecast videos 3 times a day. We have a green screen camera, very nice setup we have there. I'm also writing in our newspaper, which you can find on the Back of the World section. That, of course, goes online, meaning that we do live in a digital world.
Check out the Back of the World section.
There you go. Yeah, check out the Back of the World section. You'll see the forecast there. And, I do like to boast a little bit that we are the only place that does a mainland and a shore forecast year-round. And that includes highs and lows. And we, being that we do cover largely shore or areas like here, in Stafford Township near the shore, we like to make that differentiation because there are nights, especially during the winter, where it could be 10 degrees colder here than it is, right across the bridge over in LBI.
That is something we hear a lot. People take a short little trip, and
Yep.
the temperature can be substantial.
Big differences, and like I said, in the winter and even more so in the fall where it could be jacket weather here, but, you go to the shore and maybe you just need a light sweater or something to be out and about.
So now you do a lot of community work to educate the public on the weather. What types of outreach and education do you do?
Yeah, so events like this are great to reach out to the community. I really believe that, when you're working in media, especially local news, you have to be out. And I love being out, and that was one of the best parts of this job. So this year in 2019, I've done about 50 outreach events, whether it's going to schools and talking with schools.
That's about one a week then.
Sometimes, yeah, about one a week. Sometimes I get into breaks and I do 2 a week, but yeah, about one time a week, and talking with senior groups, also speaking with various nonprofits. Really, if you want me to come on out, I'm fairly accessible to come on out, and I'm more than happy to do it as
We're
well.
going to keep that in mind.
That's fine if you ever want me to come back.
So you mentioned a lot of science and math,
Yeah.
and obviously we live in an age where people carry their computers with them, their
Mhm.
phones. So
Sure.
what type of tools and technology do you use to forecast the weather?
Yeah, so it is all computer based. Most of my day is spending in front of a desk, looking at different things. In terms of specific tools, satellite and radar are key. Those are our eyes in the sky to see what's going on, or you can also look, to the west or to the north to see what's coming your way. Also utilizing various. There's a program called BuffKit, which I won't get into, which helps really localized forecasts, and then computer guidance models, which I believe many of us are familiar with. You might have heard of the GFS model or the European model. Those are tools to help us forecast. And the one thing I like to say when I get these kind of questions is that they are tools. They're not gospel. So I'm not reading and ripping and putting that out. It's using what you know about the weather and then using those models to give you a forecast for, in our case, we at the press, we go out to 7 days.
Would you say that meteorology or weather forecasting is both an art and a science?
You could say that, yes. Yeah, especially when you get localized. Absolutely.
Now, what would you say is the best way to stay up to date on the current weather or the upcoming weather?
Sure. Well, I would definitely say to follow us on our website, pressofac.com/weather. We have a full weather website for you with articles, forecasts in different formats, video forecasts that you can just read. We also have a radar and satellite on our page. We have webcams. So I would say that's a great way to stay on top of the weather.
So you have a very functional website.
Very functional website, yes. I am the person, me along with our digital developer in charge of it, so it's kind of my baby, and I love to do that. Also, you can follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. But, let's say you're not in South Jersey, you're traveling somewhere, holiday season, or whether it's during the winter, you want to go to Florida maybe to see what's going on. National Weather Service is great for forecast, and that website's weather.gov.
Weather.gov, all right. Now, since weather patterns can change, you have to stay very busy, obviously, to keep up with all this, because the weather truly is a current event.
Yes, very.
So can you tell us what the typical day is for a meteorologist?
Yeah, sure. So a typical day for myself, and we'll go with a day where I don't have an event. But I'm getting into the office just in the morning, 9 or 9:30 is how my day starts. We have our morning meeting, but specifically for forecasting, usually takes about an hour to forecast each day. If you really want a good, thorough feel what the next 7 days are. Sometimes it's longer. We have a nor'easter coming our way. You really want to know what those start and stop times are for rain or rain changing the snow.
Severe weather, I would think you'd want to be able to
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So you want to take your time. For me to build the video forecast, actually piecing together the slideshow that goes for the forecast, that takes about anywhere from a half hour to 45 minutes. Then I'm recording, usually around 12 or 12:30, editing, putting that all up. That takes me to about 1 o'clock, 1:30, writing in the paper, writing our weather column for the paper afterwards. For me personally, my free time is typically in the mid-afternoon, 2:30 to 4:30, to work on other stories that I might be working on. And then we go right back at it, and we're doing 2 videos that I do during the early evening hours. And, it depends on how the day goes. Sometimes it's, you're out 6:30. Sometimes if there's severe weather, I don't, if the weather's constant, I'm up, if there's something significant happening. Or if there's other pieces of, stories, or whether it's updating on social media to account for. I like to, because we're in such a heavy digital environment, and being with the Press of Atlantic City, I always try to be very active on social media and respond to people.
So in southern New Jersey, what are the typical patterns of weather with the different seasons?
Yeah, so during the winter, we're looking for 2 main things. We're looking for cold shots to come from Canada, whether it's Quebec or Ontario, and of course nor'easters. Nor'easters can come in many shapes and sizes. Sometimes the impacts are as minimal as just some gusty winds and cloudy skies and maybe a little coastal flooding to, significant coastal flooding events with a foot or more snow, or snow that changes to sleet or rain. Being along the Parkway corridor, especially where we are here in Ocean County, we can be fairly close to that. Are we mostly rain or are we mostly a mix? Going into the springtime, we're talking about, do we have any late freezes or frost for agriculture? But during the spring, we're still dealing with nor'easters. It's really till you get to about May or June where you get out of nor'easter season, and then you're talking about severe weather, in terms of significant weather hazards. Severe thunderstorms, hail. In 2019, we had 9 tornadoes, the second most in recorded history, which go back to the 1950s. And then, for hurricane season, runs from June to November. For us here in New Jersey, really we're looking more towards August, September, and of course October with Sandy for hurricane season.
You typically think of New Jersey as a tornado state.
Yeah.
But we do get them.
Yeah, we do get them on occasion, absolutely.
So now this past summer, 2019, was a very wet year. Can you give us an overview of what the weather that you observed?
Yeah, and it's very, I guess, funny that we're here because we were in the hot spot for weather during the summer, and I have a couple of notes here that I'll look down on. There were 2, and I believe they were Saturdays in a row with thunderstorms that what we like to call train, or pretty much just consistently go over the township. So we had one on July 6th, and there's 2. There's actually 3 rain gauges in Stafford, but I'll talk about one specifically that had 5.7 inches of rain. That is a 1 in 100 year event, or put in other words, a 1% chance of seeing it in any given year. That's pretty rare, but you go 7 days later, and it was the same kind of setup. Thunderstorms sat overhead, and 5.5 inches of rain fell. That was the most in the state for the month of July.
I was told that it was the most in the country.
I don't know that for sure. You may very well be right. It's very unusual to have 2-inch plus events.
And that all fell in a very short period of time.
It did, yes.
Less than 2 hours, I believe.
Yeah, and that's the thing with severe thunderstorms or even just heavy rain during the summer, is that they do come in a short period of time. If we got 5 inches of rain in a week's time spread out, yes, that's a lot of rain, but we could handle it. But when you have 5 inches of rain in 1 or 2 hours, that's a whole different ballgame.
What would you attribute that to?
So to get thunderstorms that train or like kind of move in the same place overhead, you want weak steering currents. And what I mean by that is when you're talking 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 30,000 feet in the air, the winds aren't moving that much, and that helps to steer the thunderstorm. So if one was to blossom overhead or nearby, if there's no real strong steering flow, it could really just meander overhead, and that's what we saw.
So that was a lot for 2019, and we all remember July.
Yeah.
Getting the most rain in the state.
Hopefully we don't see that again.
I hope not. So let's talk about going into 2020. Do you have any long-term forecasts for the new year here in Stafford?
Yeah, absolutely. I put out, with the help of long-range forecasters, a long-range winter outlook for us here. And as we go into January and February, they are typically our snowiest months of the year. On average, right here in Stafford, you're probably good for about 1.5 foot or 18 inches of snow on average. So some years are more, some years are less. It does look like we have another active winter. Last winter was active. My question last winter was, well, we're going to be wet or white? And we were mostly rainy rather than white, but we did see a good amount of snow. I think this season, when we go into January, February, and March, we're talking about an average amount of snowfall, so you can figure around that 18-inch mark. We'll get our nor'easters that come up the coast. I think as we go into January and February, we are going to be about average, which is cold. So that does give us opportunities for snow. The one thing I will say, and I've been saying this for really since the fall, is I think when we go into March, it's more of a spring month for us than a wintry month. Winter sometimes hangs on very deep into March or sometimes even early April. I don't necessarily see that going into this March.
Okay, so you think this might not be, we might not get the April winter?
No, I think, there'll be cold days in March, there'll be cold days in April, but in terms of are we talking about days that are below freezing all day, or even staying stuck in the 30s? I think they're going to be fairly few and far between for March, and especially as we go into April.
All right, so we're going to hold Joe to that forecast there, so feel free to
Uh-oh.
reach out to him
All
as
right.
spring rolls around.
The other thing too, we could talk about when we go into the March and April time frame is, even if we do get a coastal storm and it is, rain, and even if we're 60 and raining, is the coastal flooding is a real, concern here as well. We have been pretty fortunate over the past year not to have any significant coastal flooding events. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about major flood stage, or even what we would consider a high moderate flood stage. I believe we only saw one of those, and that was in October. So we're gonna, fingers crossed that we don't have any kind of significant coastal flooding. However, that's always something we like to talk about. And a person who I know very well, Jim Eberwine, he's very familiar with South Jersey weather, has been here his whole life, worked for National Weather Service, says, we almost have a 12-month hurricane season or a 12-month nor'easter season just because of the coastal flooding. It can happen at any point during the year, so we always like to watch out.
I'm glad you mentioned the coastal flooding. So the township here, Stafford Township, is a member of the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. So we're trying to look for ways to make the township areas, bayfronts, more resilient. Do you ever factor anything in, like sea level increases or extreme weather events into your forecasts?
Yeah, so what I'd like to say about that is the models that we're looking at that help me forecast for coastal flooding already have that baked in. And this isn't necessarily Stafford Township, but I'll use Atlantic City as an example. We've seen 8 times more coastal flooding events this decade than we have in the 1950s and 60s.
Wow.
In Atlantic City. You can translate some of that up here as well. And of course, being, we have the bay, of course, to our east, and we have some tributaries that are running through, and of course, places like, I believe it's like Beach Haven West that have, all the lagoons and everything.
Well, Beach Haven West was built in the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
As I said, the coastal population has increased
Sure.
over that time, so more people are affected by these types of things.
Yeah, and I have family who live, who have a summer home here in Stafford Township, so I'm very familiar, being here during the summer months. So anyway, to answer your question directly, yes, we do factor that into coastal flooding forecasts, and it is something we've seen more of over time. And New Jersey Coastal Coalition, I know, has been a great help for not only Stafford Township but along the coast, and I've been happy to say I've been involved there as well.
All right. So do you see, as you see a lot of changes, homes being elevated
Yeah.
to comply primarily with insurance requirements,
Yes.
things like that. But how do you see your work as a meteorologist contributing towards helping communities become more resilient?
Yeah, part of my work at the Press of Atlantic City, in addition to forecasting, is writing other stories, and I will focus on coastal flooding for different stories. So I think, as a meteorologist, just explaining what is happening. Of course, we can get into a whole political debate about what to do about it, but, my job is to, talk about the facts. My job, as a reporter, is to talk about what is happening. So with the Coastal Coalition, for example, are there towns that are seeing significant decreases in their flood insurance rates because they have a discount? Are we talking about different research that's done? So yeah, that's how I factor that into my work.
All right. Now, for our residents that really like weather forecasting, do you have any tricks of the trade that you can share for forecasting
Yeah,
weather?
this is another one. I'm going to go to my notes. I took a couple of notes here. Let's see if I can find them somewhere. So we were talking about how there's differences between the mainland and the shore with temperatures, and a trick of the trade I like to say for that is, if you're going into the evening and you have clear skies, calm winds, and your dew points, or a measure of humidity is low, you're going to have those nights where, again, Stafford could be 18 degrees and Long Beach Island could be 28. You're going to drop down pretty significantly. Another thing here that I always like to say for weather is, the first thing I do, or one of the first things I do when I forecast, is look at the wind direction and then look what's happening in that direction of the wind. So for example, if the wind is blowing from the west from here, okay, well, what's happening in Pennsylvania? What's happening in Maryland? If there's a big massive cloud cover and a thunderstorms there and the wind's blowing from the west, that's probably coming our way. And that's where the computer models come in. They can help you say what time they're going to come in. And going back to what I said, they're tools, but you want to use the meteorology and just observing first. So I think those are two tools, I like to share with people. In other parts of South Jersey, in Cape May County specifically, people really think that their weather is different down there, and there's some things we could talk
Out
about.
on the peninsula there.
Out on the peninsula, and there is some truth to that. We can save that for another time. But
Sure.
there's different tricks to the trade.
Let's just
depending
focus
where
on
you are.
Stafford.
Yeah, we'll focus on Stafford. For here, I think the big thing, like I said, it can get really cold quickly on those clear, calm nights, and to always look at the wind direction, look what's happening in that direction.
Okay, so you talked about a few things that the layman can do.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
But you studied a lot of science and
Yes.
Math, as you explained. So tell us a little more about the science behind meteorology.
Yeah, so the atmosphere is a fluid. I think that's the most important thing. The atmosphere is heavily consisted of, there's a lot of water vapor, but things move like a fluid in the atmosphere. So what does that mean? Well, things can be a little turbulent, right? It's not just point A to point B. Thunderstorms, for example, they could start to propagate eastward and then make a left hook, a couple minutes later. And that's all, if you think about stirring soup in a bowl and you really study it, right? Well, okay, the general circulation might be going in the circle that you're spinning, but there's always like little eddies that are spinning off. Kind of the same thing, even if you're looking at like a bathtub that's going down. So I think that's important to note. And when I was at Rutgers, a lot of our courses were similar to engineering courses because, you could do fluid dynamics, for example, and that's what we did on a weather perspective, but you might, if you had an engineering background, you were doing that as well.
Is that the Coriolis effect?
Yeah, Coriolis effect, exactly. Yes, the Coriolis.
The fluid where it.
We have to have you come on down. Maybe we can have you do a weather forecast.
Wow.
Talk about the Coriolis.
So where can residents go to get more information on your forecast and reporting?
Sure. Yeah. So our website's pressofac.com/weather. You can follow me on social media. Facebook is you can search for my name, Joe Martucci, or at JoeMartWX if you search there. Twitter is AC Press Martucci. I'm on Instagram. We like to have some fun on Instagram, so if you like having fun, it's at Joe Martucci.
You're pretty accessible then.
I'm pretty accessible.
And you have an email address.
I do, yes. That would be the letter J, and then Martucci, Martucci at pressofac.com.
jmartucci at pressofac.com. So remember in April when you tell us about that upcoming winter forecast.
I will welcome your
follow-up.
email. I will welcome your email.
So I really want to thank you for being here today and tell us all about what you do and not just what you do, but what a meteorologist does and explaining everything to you. So once again, thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I
Back
appreciate the
anytime.
time. Thanks for having us.
So if our viewers have a topic of discussion or a person you'd like me to interview for the Mayor's Forum, please contact the Township Administrator, Matt Vonderhayden, at 609-597-1000, extension 8516. And Joe, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.